everyone, welcome to another Underrated Film Saturday, and today I thought it'd be interesting to briefly talk about the film The Town. This one came out relatively recently, and it's sort of been around here and there, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people talk about this particular film. It kind of got thrown under the bus, and I think this probably had to do with the fact this was, I think, sort of the earlier days into which Ben Affleck was kind of um, not really at least taken as seriously maybe as he is now in some of his projects. Again, I think that's still up in the air. But he was more so known of being just an actor at this point, and again, not an actor that I think a whole lot of people took that seriously. He was sort of a someone that you sort of remember from Daredevil, and it was kind of the stage of his career where he was kind of making that transitioning of doing more than just being an actor, and I think he did do this in order to take himself more seriously. And I think when you're at the beginning stages of that, it's going to be hard for people to really grasp onto what you ultimately end up making initially. I think Argo was sort of a step, I guess, in the right direction for him. I believe this film came out a little bit before Argo, if I'm not mistaken. So again, it's sort of that earlier transitioning within his career, because I think he helped out with other aspects to this film than just starring in it. So again, this was definitely a more serious film of his. And one I think he did take very seriously, but I think unfortunately people probably didn't really see him as the kind of guy that does. So, but yeah, that's just kind of my honest thoughts into why I think maybe it got a little bit overlooked. Also, I think Jeremy Renner was just kind of starting out too, and he stars in this film as well. So, it was kind of an experiment. It's sort of similar to why I think Gone Baby Gone, I believe it's called, was also a little bit overlooked. But yeah, so without further ado, let me kind of discuss this crime drama. So it stars Ben Affleck as the main character. His name is Doug McRae. And basically, he is a leader of bank robbers. And basically, they kind of operate sort of as a gang of people. And one of the people that's within Ben Affleck's group is Jeremy Renner's character named James, and they emphasize how their relationship is sort of a quasi brother slash friendship relationship. So it's very strong between them in particular. And you can see that Jeremy Renner is kind of, he's very a little out there and a little crazy at times. And you see how Ben Affleck's character is maybe a little bit more level-headed, but at the same time, they seem to bounce off each other quite well. And this is supposed to take place, I believe, in Boston, so they got thick Boston accents and everything. So basically, what ultimately sort of happens as the film is being sort of introduced is that Jeremy Renner's character ends up taking a hostage from one of the banks that they rob, and this hostage is named Claire Keesley. Kesey? I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, but basically, she sort of ends up being kind of like a witness to the whole robbery, being a hostage, and then eventually being set free. And you can tell that she's kind of working with the police as they're trying to figure out exactly what happened, and she ultimately gets in contact with Doug, Ben Affleck's character, because basically they figure out sort of that she was part of the, uh, she really was a hostage, and they want to make sure that she doesn't really figure out kind of who their identities are. And so he's kind of snooping at first to see what she knows, and ultimately trying to figure out a way to make sure that they're not caught. Um, but but during that time, he eventually, Doug, Ben Affleck's character, ends up falling for Claire. So he ends up being in love, and this causes some conflict because he is caught between the world of crime and uh, the world of normalcy, which is really inhabited by Claire because she's just a normal person working at a bank. And also, there is sort of a there's sort of points too where you see Ben Affleck's character Doug being afraid for Claire's safety at certain points because he knows the sort of the nature behind what he and this gang of robbers do. And what's actually interesting, and why I think this film is rather unique from a lot of these other crime dramas, is usually the crime dramas, they have kind of like a, the book kind of closes ending. There is kind of this certain level of conclusiveness to it, and the good guys win, bad guys end up getting um, getting the punishment that they deserve, and all's well ends well. But here it's kind of a little bit open-ended at points, and it doesn't really end in, I think, a necessarily overly conventional way. And I think that's really what actually works to this film's advantage, and I think what people can find some enjoyment and uh, interest with this film, and what I think ultimately makes it rather refreshing. And not only do you have really solid performances all around from everyone involved in the cast, you also have it to the point where it's also really well written and well crafted as well. So it's not like one of Ben Affleck's films where, it's like Daredevil, where a lot of things don't make sense, and it really has a good script going behind it. So that's really what ultimately brings out the enjoyment that a lot of people, I think, can have from this film. It's definitely not for everyone, I would say, but I think if you definitely love crime dramas, and more so the modern day kind of crime dramas, because again, this is not necessarily that old of a film, then I think you can find some endearment and some real enjoyment and enthusiasm for this film. It's definitely not perfect, but I think it's definitely one that's a little bit not as well talked about as some other uh, projects that Ben Affleck's sort of been a part of. But yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say though about the film. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Expect a delay for Sunday's video. I might have to delay Mondays, but we'll see. But until then, everybody, bye-bye.